Tonight on the Daily Debrief, closing arguments in the case of a murder defendant who swears to tell the truth, then says,
I'm going to have to dismember my dad.
Will jurors believe his excuse? Plus,
I figured he was joking, kidding.
A defendant's shocking admissions to friends and family.
It had been his truck that was used to transport the body.
Involving the death of a Georgia beauty queen.
They burned her body and let it burn as long as they could.
And murder on the farm.
Poor Mom. She didn't deserve this at all.
A defense expert tries to destroy the state's timeline. The nation's top criminal cases are on the Daily Debrief. It's Wednesday, March 20th. And good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Debrief. I'm Aaron Keller. Stacey Delicat is here along with me. Judge Ashley Wilcott will be joining us in a second. Confessions to the police and confessions to friends and family in the case of a Georgia man accused of helping burn the body of a beauty queen in his family's orchard. Bo Dukes is charged with concealing the death of teacher and pageant competitor Tara Grinstead. Dukes is further charged with making a false statement and hindering apprehension in Wilcox County, Georgia. He faces other charges in another county. A co-defendant is charged with Grinstead's actual murder. Today in court, the state played a police interrogation with Bo Dukes. Dukes said his co-defendant, Ryan Duke, confessed to killing Grinstead, showed him her body, and asked for help.
I asked him what the hell had happened. He told me that he had gone to her house that night, used a credit card to get him through the front door lock, and strangled her in the bed. And then brought her body to the orchard. But they had stopped, and Fitzgerald had a dumpster behind the laundry mat there, and thrown her purse and keys in the laundromat. I don't know if he was trying to put her body in the dumpster too, get to it, and say anything like that. And he asked me to help him get rid of her body, and I agreed. And moved her body to wood area where there was a bunch of wood, and burned it over a period of like 2 days.
Next, Bo Dukes talked about the condition of Grinstead's body and what his co-defendant said to him.
Was there any other marks or scars or anything, gunshots, knife wounds?
Marks on her neck.
Can you describe the marks on her neck?
Almost like bruising, I guess. Not extremely noticeable, but they're there.
Were there like lines or anything like really distinct? Okay. So by this time you're probably freaking out.
Yeah.
So you immediately see this and you're like, what in the hell did you do?
Yeah. And why the did you do it here on my family's big orchard? I mean,
What did he say?
help me. That dude messed up and he needed my help. He told me later that night, after everybody had gone, after I was asleep, he drove to Fitzgerald, drove to her house, and he said it was late, very late, that night. And he used a credit card to get in through the front door. He jumped on her while she was in bed and strangled her right there in her bed. And then he had moved her body with a truck.
This testimony follows a number of other witnesses who testified that Bo Dukes admitted playing a role in the transportation and burning of Tara Grinstead's body. Bo Dukes seems to have confessed to a lot of people. First to the stand, his girlfriend's mother, who told jurors what Bo Dukes told her.
He had helped to dispose of the body, that they had burned it in the pecan orchard, and that it had been his truck that was used to transport the body.
That confession came during a questioning session which sprung from family tension.
If we wanted to see our daughter, if we wanted to celebrate holidays, if we wanted to be around her, we had to allow Bo back in the house because those were her stipulations, that Bo was the love of her life And he was part of her life, and if we didn't want him in her home, she would not come into our home.
Do you solemnly swear?
An Army buddy testified Dukes told him what happened after a conversation about a billboard for information about victim Tara Grinstead. That led Dukes to implicate his co-defendant, Ryan Duke.
He had said that he had technically killed Tara to him.
The friend had said that.
Yes, that he had beat her and accidentally strangled her and killed her, and he didn't know what to do. So he needed his truck to be able to move her body.
The friend said Dukes admitted that he agreed to lend his truck.
He had said that they had went and recovered the body, and they continued to take it to the middle of his grandpa's, or the Hudson pecan orchard. They burned her body and let it burn as long as they could, and whenever they were satisfied, they buried the rest.
The brother of co-defendant Ryan Duke testified that Bo Dukes confessed to him at a party.
It's your testimony that after Mr. Dukes told you that your brother, Ryan Dukes, had killed Tara Grinstead, you didn't have any further questions for him about it?
No, sir. I figured he was joking, kidding, just trying to get under my skin.
This defendant's own cousin recalled a similar conversation.
Did he ever admit to killing the person who he was discussing?
No.
What did he tell you his involvement was?
He, helped dispose of human remains. From what I recall, he was, rather boastful, but just knowing Bo growing up, he had that tendency to want to be a, compulsive liar and very boastful.
Several testified they didn't believe Bo Dukes, but the ultimate opinion will rest with the jury.
Tonight, our juvenile court judge Ashley Wilcott and Law and Crime host Stacey Delicat. So, Stacey, let me ask you this question. He confessed to police. He's confessing to just about everybody, but we've got other witnesses saying, oh, he's a compulsive liar. Do we believe him? Is this a strong case in your opinion?
I mean, so far, it certainly seems like a strong case. The strongest evidence, of course, being that videotape confession. I mean, where he's admitting, to burning the body himself, and his attorneys, have not tried to dispute what's on that tape. I mean, the question, though, I have is, all of these people knew about this. Where have they been for the past 15 years? I mean, that's unrelated, but as you hear the testimony of these witnesses come up and say, oh, well, my daughter said this, and he told me this, I mean, and this is on the top of the unsolved crimes.
Do we believe him or do we not? Judge Wilcott, let me ask you this question. Is there any fathomable defense at this point with all of these people, including the defendant, basically implicating the defendant?
I don't think so, because of the video statement and, like you said, statements by individuals that he's admitted it to. However, Aaron, I'm going to say that the defense had started off by saying, listen, he never withheld information. He wasn't asked about it. I think that's not a very good defense, but I'm wondering if that's what they're going to argue in closing.
This is one of these cases, Judge Wilcott, where we really need to get into the weeds with the letter of the law, because that's what the defense is trying to do here. But you know the way that goes. When you try to slice and dice it too thinly, a lot of times jurors turn around and say, give me a break. This is covered by the statute. He broke it. We're going to convict him.
Absolutely, and I think that that's exactly what might happen, and it's that whole common sense approach, and is there any reasonable doubt he did cover up this crime? I think not, based on the evidence.
It's going to be an interesting trial as it rolls along, but let's move along to the next case we're covering here. Closing arguments in the case of a Florida man accused of murdering his father, chopping up the body, and then burying some of it on a golf course. Prosecutors say James Scandarito Jr. took his father's money, had 2 passports lined up, and also lined up a private plane in hopes that he could flee the country. It's evidence the state says points to murder. The defense, however, says Scandarito and his father, who used to be a judge, were dealing drugs. Scandarito took the stand and claimed his father died after taking drugs, and he chopped up the body to prevent the police from finding their stash or their illicit business. Here is the defendant's testimony.
Have you decided in your mind what you're going to have to do?
I have.
And what was that?
That I'm going to have to dismember my dad to be able to move him out of the house. I rolled the dolly over when I am doing the dismembering of the extremities. There's a space in front of the, of course you've seen it all many times, in front of the refrigerator. When you come out of the garage on the left side, if you're looking on the left side of the garage, there's a space there. So I had laid a clear tarp down. The dolly was on top of the cart, on top of the tarp, and then I had another tarp that went over over the top of the dolly and the plastic tarp that was underneath the dolly.
Okay. And so when you are actually cutting him, you're using what?
A saw.
Okay. An electric saw or a hand saw?
No, it's a handsaw.
And when you are actually cutting him, are you doing that underneath the top part?
Yes.
And why is that?
Because I can't look at what I'm doing. I just can't.
Is the jury going to believe this? Next, the defendant talked about the mechanics of cutting up his father's body. Remember, he claims his father died after taking drugs.
I take a garbage bag and I kind of cover the part that is being dismembered. So when the arm, let's say, is finally dismembered, it's kind of falls into the garbage bag.
And with those garbage bags individually, what did you do with them?
When I eventually ended up putting them all into 3 suitcases. Maybe it's not, physically strenuous, but it wasn't. It was not something that it was a quick. It was a long time. I would take frequent breaks, go out through the garage door, into the outside of the house, the side of the house, smoke cigarettes, and just, wish that this nightmare wasn't happening.
During closing arguments today, the prosecution said this all adds up to premeditated murder.
When you look at all the documents, you look at all the records, you look at all the physical evidence, and you realize the time frame that this happened in, and what the defendant's doing before, and what he's doing after, a clear picture appears. The defendant dismembered his body, his father's body, to cover up his premeditated murder. That's why he did it. And then he flees the country, or tries to get away with as much money as he can at that point in time, because he killed and dismembered his father, and he didn't expect the police to catch on. When you look at the evidence, you can see the strain between the two of them, the mounting pressure from his finances, the promises he's making to a woman that he has feelings for, that he wants to give her a life. He wants to go back to that life, and he's 50 years old, and his dad is 74 years old, and he's the only thing standing in his way, because he can't keep a steady income. Ladies and gentlemen, when you put all of those pieces together, that picture that is shown to you from your common sense is that the defendant killed and dismembered his father, period.
The defense downplayed the defendant's admission that he cut up his father and focused instead on trying to convince jurors that the state could not prove premeditation, had no evidence of a struggle, and had no murder weapon.
The state is completely incapable of proving premeditation in this case. They are claiming that Jimmy wanted to kill his father, and the best that they can do to explain anything is this motive about money. They got up here earlier and said that even back in August of 2017, he was having these issues with his father. So Jimmy Scandarito, since August, has been thinking about killing his father and doesn't have one relevant search, text, research bit, library card purchase, like doesn't watch any CSI, like nothing to think about how to do this? Premeditating what? It's got to be the worst premeditation in the history of premeditations. Everything came afterwards. Everything came after the police got involved. Yeah, of course he was panicking. Of course he was freaking out and had to run. He did dismember his father. That is a crime. Of course he's on the run. And he said he didn't want to go to jail. Then how did this happen? How could it be the killing of someone if there's nothing anywhere for signs to show us?
Back to Judge Ashley Wilcott and Law and Crime host Stacey Delicat on this one. So, okay, this is another one of these cases, in my opinion, where this is all going to break down and fall apart on the defendant's own testimony. Stacey Delicat, do you believe a word that comes out of his mouth?
Do I believe a word that comes out of Scandarito's mouth? I mean, hard to say. I believe when he, you know, what he says he did, obviously, which is dismembering the body. We know that, but I don't find him too believable otherwise, because a lot of it has to do with his tone. He's so matter of fact. Where's the emotion here? I mean, if this narrative is true, he and his father were so close. They played golf every day. They're on the phone, you know, every other hour, you know, but yet he's talking about cutting up his father's body as if it was, you know, chopping up some old wood.
Dad would understand, because we were dealing drugs together. Okay, he's got this theory, Judge Wilcott. I didn't see a lot of evidence of this drug business to kind of back this story up. Did you?
No, not at all. I think that was the missing piece. This case infuriates me because based on the emotion of it and the appearance of the defendant, I'd love to see him found guilty of murder. But I don't think they connected the drugs into it. And I do not think that the state has really proven beyond a reasonable doubt that he murdered his father, or that in fact the father was actually murdered.
This is all a case of burden, like every case here, so it's important to bring that up. But look, you know, not only did the defendant get up there and spin that tale yesterday saying, oh, well, I chopped him up after I found him dead. Not only did he say that, but he gave that bizarre interrogation where police said, you know, did you know your dad was missing? Oh, yeah, I just assumed he was out having sex because he asked to borrow my Viagra. What kind of statements are coming out of this guy's mouth? How did jurors believe this guy?
Well, I think he's believable. I just think he has mental issues. I'm sorry, I jumped right in because I think he is so abnormal in terms of normal personality, because he even talks about dismembering his father like it's another walk in the park.
Stacey Delicat, same question.
I was going to say, you know, and he's coming up with so many different excuses at the beginning. Oh, he was kayaking, and maybe something happened when he was kayaking, and now it's, oh, he must be with this woman. It was like he was trying to throw anything and everything at the wall and see what would stick, which I think is what we're still hearing on the stand.
Jurors still deliberating in this case. We'll have to wait and see what happens. We'll be back with the panel in a second. And still ahead tonight here on The Debrief, the case of murder on the farm. Did the victim show signs of rigor mortis when she was found dead by her son and husband? And how does that affect the charges against the son? We'll take you back inside the courtroom in just a moment. Welcome back to The Debrief. The defense has the case of an Iowa farmer accused of murdering his own mother over money. Bottom line here, prosecutors say Jason Carter killed Shirley Carter and then staged the scene to look like a robbery. The defense said during openings that friends and family would testify that Carter loved his mother and that the family got along well. That claim seems to have backfired because of derogatory testimony about the defendant from both a friend and from the defendant's own father. The defense, however, is questioning the state's timeline. A defense expert said Shirley Carter was likely dead for a couple of hours before the defendant's father said his wife's body was exhibiting signs of rigor mortis. The defense says that means Jason Carter could not have been the killer.
In my opinion, Mrs. Carter had died about 2 hours, possibly somewhat more, possibly a little bit less, but no less than 1 hour. More, most likely, in my opinion, I would express, would be around 2 hours, recognizing some variation up or down, so to speak, from a temporal standpoint.
And that was 2 hours prior to
the time that Mrs. Carter was found to be dead by her son, Mr. Jason Carter, and then with Mr. William Carter, her husband, and then Ms. Goff, the EMT person.
Judge Ashley Wilcott still with us tonight, along with Law and Crime Network host Stacey Delicat. So we've got a lot of testimony in this case. It's an interesting case because the husband of the victim, the father of the defendant, has basically said, okay, my wife was exhibiting these signs of rigor mortis, but then he backtracked a lot of that on the witness stand. Judge Wilcott, does the defense opinion here hold any weight based on the father being the one who really observed this, sort of backing off on it and saying, oh, well, I'm really not an expert, even though I used to be a butcher?
Right. He did wiggle a lot, didn't he, when he was examined on the stand? And I think that the credibility of both him in kind of changing his statement and saying, I'm not an expert, and the credibility of Wright that we just watched, those two pieces and the credibility is really what the jury's going to base their decision on, in my opinion.
I would agree with that as well. Stacey Delicat here, they're saying that money is the motive in this case. But, you know, farm finances are up and down all the time. We heard a lot of testimony about that. And it was just so sad to sit there and watch the father really recount his last moments with his wife. Jurors might focus on that as well, though, and feel sorry for this guy.
I mean, yeah, that's true, right? Who knows which way the jurors will go, what sort of sympathizing they will do with either the defendant or relatives of the victim. But back to the earlier point about the rigor mortis, I mean, I think, you know, the father's recollections, we definitely can't go on that because he was sort of wiggling back and forth. Yeah, he was a butcher, but I mean, I always wonder, even with the medical examiners, when they testify, I mean, how precise is this stuff that we could say we know for sure it was 2 hours and it matches up? I mean, to me, that's certainly not enough to prove that Jason Carter wasn't involved.
I mean, it might just be enough to inject reasonable doubt into the case because that's all the defense needs to do. Judge Ashley Wilcott, Law and Crime Network host Stacey Delicat, appreciate your opinions here on The Debrief tonight, as always.
Thanks, Aaron.
Thanks, Aaron.
And thanks a lot for watching The Debrief tonight. We hope you'll join us again tomorrow at 5 o'clock Eastern, live on the Law and Crime Network for this recap of the best moments in cases nationwide, along with the day's top legal headlines. Our live trial coverage will pick up tomorrow at 9 o'clock Eastern, live on the network. Have a good night. We'll see you tomorrow.